So in today's Warthunder video, we have the FE 4030-3, which is basically this a chieftain if you upgraded it to be the Challenger. So I think it's actually a pretty cool little interesting vehicle that even I didn't really know much about this vehicle before they announced it for Warthunder. Now the thing about this vehicle is that it's actually a lower battle rating than the Challenger ones, being at 9.7, but you do have some fatal flaws, mainly being around that your top round is L23, and also you do not have thermals, which I mean for most people would probably be you don't really need thermals, to be quite honest with you, in this battle rating bracket, but it's nice to have. But I think the big portion is definitely the round. L23 is not the best APFSDS that you can find around these battle ratings, and especially since this thing's going to be 9.7, and you're most likely going to see a lot of T72s, and you're also going to see that lineup at 10.3 for Russia, like the T80UD. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle with just L23, so I definitely feel like it might be a little bit underpowered when it comes to its gun performance. But the thing about the Challengers is that the reload rate, it can go all the way down to 5 seconds, which I think is honestly pretty good. You also get the same armor as the Challenger, which means that this composite up here in the turret is basically going to be non-pinned by majority of the tanks that you'll face. You'll only start to see this getting pinned once you get into the 3BM42 territory, and then especially 3BM60 will just eat straight through this. But majority of the tanks that you'll find, like this fire DM33, DM23, they will not be able to pin this, which means if you can find a really good position with this FV and get into a really good hold down positions, you can easily like tank a bunch of shots. But you do have to worry about that your turret right here, the turret ring itself in the center, does not have any armor, which basically just goes straight to the breach, and you will be gun breached every single time. So you better have a good crew to repair that, because it is very annoying, and one of the most annoying things about playing Challengers in general is that your breach most likely will get took out. Now the thing about the lower plate is, and then the hull itself is, as you can see, this lower plate down here has no armor, so easily able to be pinned. And even this upper plate right in here, even though it says it has composite screens, it still cannot really protect you from much. Like for example, we can go to the Roycat Mark 1D right here, and even though this is a 76mm from 500 meters, it still is able to pin this upper portion even where it said that there was composite screens at. So basically don't even rely on this bottom hole down here to protect you from basically anything. It is not going to be consistent. As you can see, it's only 84 down here. Even vehicles like a T-34-85 can pin you from that. And it is one of the hugest weak spots of Challengers in general, that their holes are incredibly weak for what they are. But I mean, if you look at up here, you're getting around like 440. If we go to, like, for example, the Russians, and then we go to rank 7, pick out, let's just do 280 UV, 3BM42. Even at 500 meters, there is like kind of a little bit of an area that can depend. It's very not consistent, but as soon as you drop this down, like let's drop it down to like 200 meters, which will be like your close quarter engagements, it should basically just eat straight through. Yeah, you're just going to get ate straight through every single time. So range for 3BM42 is going to be your savior. And then if you go into vehicles, like for example, let's just go to 292, I mean, like easily just going to eat through you every single time, because it is the most powerful. T80U, just so we can use 3BM46. Let's see here. So as you can see, eat straight through you. I mean, it's a vehicle that you may see if you, especially if you up tier the vehicle. So it is like a ceiling whenever you see APFSDSs of if they'll be able to pin you. But I mean, we'll look at like one more. We'll go to Germany. We'll go to TAM2IP, take DM33. As you can see, it even protects you from DM33. Let's go to 0. 0 about like close quarters is basically where you're going to see maybe pins. And that is where this whole tank right here starts to suffer. But once again, if you have a smart player and they know what they're doing, they're just going to shoot this lower plate down here every single time they see you, and there's basically nothing that you can do against it. So definitely want to try to get in hold down positions, and hopefully that's what you try to do. So if we look at the X-ray, right, the engine itself is basically the exact same as the Challenger 1. Here's the transmission, 3522. And then there's one thing that I did want to note that I actually noticed that there was a little bit different, is this little like optical thing at top up here. It is actually a little bit higher on the Challenger, on this Challenger, than it is the Challenger 1. So for example, if you, we'll just use China just to be able to use them. We use China, go to rank 7, then we use the ZTZ, and then we take their HE, right, which is equivalent to the Russian HE. This up here is definitely a kill shot, especially for vehicles, which I do want to note, vehicles that are going to like suffer from this like a little bit, or not suffer from it, but going to benefit from it. It's going to be vehicles like a T, let's see here, let's go down to the T's, where's the at? T64B. Let's just say they don't have 3BM42, and then all they have is the OF 26. they can still shoot that with a HE, and it overpressures basically everyone in your tank. While on the Challenger 1, this is a little bit smaller, so it's a little bit harder to hit, but especially if they're able to see that, and if they can shoot in here as well, they can easily just overpressure this pretty much this whole entire tank, which is a little bit concerning, and you do have to worry about that a little bit. So yeah, let's just see how this vehicle does in the wonderful test drive, and we'll see you guys there. All right, so there was one thing that I did forget to mention when we were in the hangar, and that this vehicle comes with stock APDS, which is a round that you can find on the 8.7 Chieftains. So the Mark III and the Mark V both start out with this round. And well, even though this thing's about rated at 9.7, you're having to start out with a round that I think is very, very, very inferior to basically everything that you'll find around you. I mean, at least it's not a heat FS. I give it that. You know, if it was a heat FS, it would definitely be a little bit different. But at the same time, whenever you're facing vehicles like T-72s and you're facing T-64s, especially once you get like into an up tier to 10.3, which is going to be very common of seeing like T-80UDs, this little APDS is going to struggle a ton. I mean, as you can see right there, even aiming for like the driver's port of the T90 is a little bit just hard to hit. And dispersion on the 120 for the Chieftains is, and the Challengers, is a little bit crazy to think about. But I don't know. I would honestly want this vehicle to be 10.0 just so it could get access to L23A1. And at least then you would have a more reliable round for shooting angled armor. Because while L23 is pretty good at just a flat pin, the angled armor itself is just not the greatest. But I mean, once you face vehicles like a T-64A up there, I mean, yeah, it's going to be a little bit hard to just like pin these guys and shoot for like weak spots just because of the accuracy of this gun. But yeah, I mean, overall, you're going to get a very quick reload. Your reverse is honestly pretty good as well. The mobility for this vehicle, while yes, it's not the best in the world, it's not bad, which I think is honestly a good thing to say about it. This Chieftain, or let's just say the Challenger, what would you guys want to call this vehicle? I like Chieftain. I like the Chieftain Challenger. That sounds like a way better name than FE 4030. But honestly, this vehicle just reminds me of the Leopard 2AV. If you ever played that event vehicle where they basically gave out a Leopard 2 with the 105mm cannon, this basically feels basically the exact same. Like, it's a lower tier Challenger like 1 that you can find at 9.7, but at the same time, I feel like for a lot of people, it's not really that unique for them to grind it out. And I mean, now we're going to the topic of is this vehicle worth it? And I think for a lot of people, they're probably going to say no, just because you can go play the Challenger Mark 1 right now and have almost the same exact experience, except for you don't have APDS as stock, which I mean, I think for a lot of people, they would not want to have that. And then you don't have thermals. That's basically the only differences, at least looking at it right now. I mean, maybe they'll change something when it comes to this vehicle before it comes to the event itself. But I mean, it's basically just a Challenger 1, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, probably just considering from the winter event of a lot of people got burnt out from doing all three of those events, this one could be possibly an event that a lot of people just like skip out on and kind of just take a break from the game itself. So yeah, we'll have to see. This vehicle is definitely not an Object 292 worthy of a vehicle. It is pretty cool though, and I'm definitely going to grind it out. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day. If you do have any questions, make sure to ask them in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next Warthunder video.